Welcome to another edition of the Mail Time Podcast. I'm joined today by my friend Charles Jacobs. He heads the Jewish Leadership Project and is board member of the Israeli American Civic Action Network. You could also say that Charles Jacobs is right about everything. So if you look at what he wrote about and what happened before and after October 7th, a lot of what he said was correct. So Charles Jacobs, thanks for joining.
Thank you, Daniel. Good to see you. Good to
And
see you.
and I'll just add for the loyal watchers here that go see a dermatologist. And you should have seen the other guy, right, with my white bandage here. But I'm going to do it because when you have a chance to talk about these kinds of issues, it's very important. I want to go right into tonight's topic, which is American Jewish leadership. You had a very, very public and open dispute with leaders in the Boston area Jewish community about anti-Semitism in the Newton public schools. And fast forward, and this was last decade, and then fast forward, and now all of a sudden everyone's concerned about what's going on in middle schools and in high schools and on college campuses. So can you walk us through a little bit about what you saw and where we are now?
Sure. So I've been in this business for 35 years, fighting anti-Israelism and as the new anti-Semitism. Uh, 22 years ago, we made a film about Columbia University. Avi Goldwasser and I, he was the filmmaker, called Columbia Unbecoming. And we warned the Jewish community and Jewish community leadership in particular about what was about to happen. At that moment, way back a couple of decades, it was only the professoriate. It was only these, left-wing professors, Muslim professors who were intimidating Jewish students in class and on campus. And at that point, it was like a lump in your breast. You could, if you had the right leadership, you rip it out, right? Now they didn't do anything and it's metastasized. And now it's not only the professoriate, it's all the groups on campus, it's all the identity groups, it's the Jewish kids can't even walk on campus anymore. Okay. So that's kind of like the symbol, one of the symbols of the failure of American Jewish leadership to protect and defend the community. Okay. There were many instances like that. We told in the beginning, they said, well, every day that the New York Times bombs Israel with B-52s, and it wasn't just them, it was the Boston Globe, the Washington Post, the LA Times, it was every liberal newspaper was focusing on Israeli conduct, right? That's the very definition of anti-Semitism. When you focus on Jewish conduct and you judge it differently from other people. And we said, stop saying what you're saying, that it was only, legitimate criticism of specific Israeli policies. It was not. It was defamation, right? We're now defamed. We are now, the Jewish community is surrounded and attacked by three of the most powerful ideologies in the world all together: the right, the left, and Islamists, right? We are surrounded. Our house is on fire. The cavalry is not coming. The ADL and the JCR.
Well, it's actually let me just give a little critique. It's not that they're not coming. It's that they're actively trying to kneecap you. So when you talk about the response, it's not like these groups were saying, oh, we're going to try to help you battle these issues. They were actually siding with the enemies of the students. Yes.
Absolutely. Look, we wrote a book, and we wrote this book. Hold it. Here it is. Betrayal, the Failure of American Jewish Leadership, right? Avi Goldwasser and I wrote this book. It's a compilation of essays by Dershowitz and me and Caroline Glick and Mort Klein, and also by all the other activist groups around the country who were trying to fight for the Jewish students on campus or in K-12 and who were kneecapped, as you say. I'll tell you what happened in Newton. This is despicable. So Newton is a leafy Jewishy suburb of Boston. And in the public schools, we find out the kids are coming and telling us that they're teaching them that Jews are murdering Arab women in Israeli jails, right? Okay, so we get the books, we find out, funded by the Saudis, spread around through teachers' unions. Then we find out that the Newton teachers were trained at the Harvard Divinity School by anti-Israel professors to go back and bring the curriculum. And now K-12 is the biggest problem that we have, because every American student is learning that Jews are devils, is that
Right.
we stole the land from this innocent indigenous, dark-skinned people, and we're devils. So in Newton, we had to file FOIA requests, legal requests, which cost us lots of money to find out what they were teaching. They wouldn't just teach, even though we were citizens, tax-paying citizens. We should know what they're teaching our kids. No, we had to file FOIA requests. It was horrible. I went and I got CAMRA, the Committee for Accuracy in Middle East Reporting in America, to do a whole 100-page analysis booklet. They had a booklet on what that they were teaching kids in the schools. It was horrible. It was lies. It was every lie you could think of, right? So we go to the JCRC, we go to the Federation. We went to Barry Schrage, who was the head of the Federation. I'll name names, who was the head of the Federation at that time.
I think names are a good thing, by the way. I think that too often we try to be unified on this. I think someone, if they're going to take a position for good or bad, they should just be named. Okay, no problem.
Right. This whole thing about Jewish unity, by the way, is ridiculous. I mean,
Well,
there never was Jewish unity. There never is going to be Jewish unity.
We can get to that after. It's that I think that true unity is actually respecting factions. So if you want to be a leftist and you want to be in a certain way, that's fine. Okay. And let people make a decision based on what the best faction they think represents Jewish people, and you kind of negotiate it out. But the idea that every single person has to think the exact same way is crazy. So
anyway, so we went to them, and they said, "Oh, you're exaggerating. Oh, you're exaggerating. It's not so bad. It's not so bad." And then we went to the mayor, and we showed the mayor page by page by page of what they were doing. And she was told before I went into her office not to pay attention to me because I was an exaggerating radical Zionist right winger. Okay, you know who told her that? The Federation. So they kneecapped us. In order to protect their own reputation. So the next thing that happened was I got the head of the JCRC, his name is Jeremy Burton, to come to my house, in my kitchen in this house, and sit down and talk to a woman whose son was in the Newton North High School. And she walked him through page by page. But at the end of it, it was supposed to be a 10-minute meeting. It was like almost an hour. He said, "You know what? I didn't really understand how bad this was, and I'm going to have to go now and reverse our public position, which was it was only an exaggeration. And I'm going to have to say, this is really a problem." A week goes by, nothing happens. Another week goes by, nothing. I call him up. "Jeremy, what happened?" "My board won't let me say it because you can't be so right about this and we can't be so wrong about such a thing." Right? So they betrayed us. They stabbed us in the back for their own jobs, for their own positions, because who's going to ever follow them again if they made such a big mistake? And that's what's happening today all across the board. Who's going to follow these people?
And I'll say, I remember when I was in college and Charlie Kirk had dropped out, right? And we were at the first conference. I remember there was all sorts of big names there speaking. It was in Las Vegas. And Chaim Saban was there. Dr. Bob Shillman was there. I think there's some other people. And I remember talking to Charlie about some of the issues he had when he was trying to help fight the BDS movement on campus. And it was the Hillels, the ADL, J Street, all these people, because they wanted to preserve the transgender LGBTQ coalition, and having a right-wing, non-Jewish group work with them violates their DEI. It was kind of predated DEI at the time, but it violated their hard left coalition. So therefore, he was actually facing opposition from Jewish groups trying to be on campus to actually help. So that's I think the real story, because you don't, like you were talking about Newton, we don't, we expect people to hate us. We expect that you're going to have anti-Israel activists and you're going to have the Islamists that don't like the Jewish community. That's fine. But when you have your own Jewish community coming after you, it's just a whole nother level.
Well, look what they did. Look what they did. Who did they tell us? We gave them all this money to protect our children, right? The Jewish treasury. They have the money that's supposed to protect my kids and my grandchildren. And what did they do with this wisdom? They went out and they said, we have to ally with these identity groups, the feminists and the gays and the trans and the Black Lives Matter and even the Muslims, okay? So October 8th happens, October 8th comes, every one of the groups that they told us to ally with stabbed us in the back. And we supported all their agendas. Better if they had
it's the identity groups. It's only identity groups on the left. It's not the identity groups on the right.
No. Right. They support all those groups. Better if they took all their money and burned it rather than give it to them. If they would have climbed up the top of the Empire State Building and throw all the cash out, that'd have been better than what they did with it. So they're not. So our house is on fire. We are surrounded by these really, really terrible groups. We are being defamed, and Rabbi Heschel said, the Holocaust did not start with the construction of the crematoria, but with the defamation of the Jews. We're being defamed. The cavalry's not coming. They're not going to come. They can't pivot. They can't say now, well, we told you to go here. That kind of didn't work out, but send us some more money and they don't want to figure it out. They can't figure it out. It's not in their head. So guess what, my little Jewish friends? Saddle up, because that cavalry's not coming, and we're the only ones who can save ourselves. And that's what we have to do. We have to figure out what to do. And
Have you
that's what
seen real progress since October 7th in terms of some leaders waking up and saying, "Hey, I got it wrong"? Have you gotten any calls from people saying,
No,
"I'm
no,
sorry"?
no, no. Private conversations with heads of federations who won't, we agreed not to tell, that they're talking to me or I'm talking to them. But in general, I could say, they say it out loud. We can't say that. I say, well, okay, here's what you ought to do. Don't apologize. That's okay. So all right. But if you turned in the right way, that'd be helpful. So I'll let you off. Don't apologize. I won't drop a dime on you anymore. Okay. Number one, explain to the Jews how woke progressivism defeated the classic liberalism that defended us all these years as a minority, because they don't understand why all this stuff is coming from the left, and you understand it. At least you should understand it. Explain. So that's number one. Explain to them Islamic Jew hatred, which probably is the biggest threat to Jewish life on the planet. Explain it. Explain how there could be what seems like a crazy alliance between leftists and Muslims, right? How can guys who believe in nipple rings and gender fluidity, who would be thrown off the roof in Gaza for that, how can they make common cause? You know the answer, because they both want to destroy the West. The left wants to replace it with some UN, mankind governance, and the Muslims want to replace it with Sharia law. So they're locked arm in arm. So you explain that to people so that we can fight back. They won't do it.
So what do we do?
Okay. That's Lenin's question. What is to be done? So number one, we have some principles. Number one, go on the offense. Stop explaining. They taught us from ever since I was your age and before that the Bible of Hasbara was called, the book is called Myths and Facts. And they said, they didn't even call it lies. They said myths. They said, well, if they say Jewish state is colonialist, imperialist, you explain to them, here, read the Balfour Declaration. That's not a way to fight back. That's not a way to fight.
It's a recipe to lose. Yeah.
So what you got to flip the narrative. Ruth Weiss, my dear friend, and Melanie Phillips says the same thing. You have to point the finger back at your accuser. Colonialism, I'm so glad you're interested in colonialism, because it really harms people. It's terrible. It's terrible. But guess what? Islam started as a dot on the desert in 637, and now there's 52 Muslim countries. How do you think they got to be that way? Through conquest. They are the biggest imperialists there are. So I'm glad you're, interested in imperialism. But if you haven't noticed that, maybe it's not that you're interested in imperialism. Maybe it's you're interested in Jewish conduct. Maybe that's your problem. Arab babies dead? You know how many Arab babies are dead in the Iran-Iraq war? A gazillion times more than whatever's happening, whatever you say is happening in Israel. So you're not interested in Arab babies dead. You're interested in Jewish conduct. So F you. Forget it.
I'll say this. I don't know if you caught this, but Dave Smith, the comic Dave Smith, who's now become cause du jour. He's everywhere. He actually tweeted 3 days after the ceasefire, while Hamas was executing people in Gaza. He says, "I'm really glad that no more Palestinians are being killed." I said, so you actually just do not care about Palestinians. You only care, like you said, about Jewish conduct.
Right. So first is go on the offense. So we have teams across the country in like 10 cities, and we guide them, we teach them, we train them how to flip the narrative, right? The apartheid wall, do you know how many walls there are and barriers across the globe that are separating conflicting parties? There's 12 of them. at least. But we only have the apartheid one. Ours is the only apartheid where you can't find another one. So this is baloney.
Also, how many of those walls are actually have space in them that you can have people come in to
Right.
make money and then go back?
Yeah.
I don't understand.
No, but that's the key. Okay, so the defamation code. Okay, here's the defamation code. Whatever they said about us is not true, but they did it. They did it. They're the ones who were starving people. Go to look in Sudan and Darfur, where I was. They're starving masses and masses of people. We didn't starve anybody. You know, so we have to turn the finger back and stop being defensive and go on the offense. They're bad. That's the message. They're bad. Second thing is, we have to Americanize our theme, our posture. The Jewish house is on fire, but that's only meant to burn down America. That's meant to burn down America. We're the first target, but we're not the last target. So we have, therefore, many, many natural allies, not the ones that our Jewish Federation sent us to embrace, right? You know who the allies are? Republicans, God forbid, conservatives, patriots, Christians. That's one set. You know, the other set is all the other victims of jihadism. Nigerians in America, fantastic group, you know, Iranians in America who hate the Ayatollahs, Hindus in America. Those are the people that we have to ally with. They're natural allies. So if you're in one of our teams and across the cities, we're sending you people who are natural allies to fight those fights with you on in the schools and on the campuses. That's the way that we can win. And you know, I think Jews, there's hundreds of thousands of Jews across the country who are concerned, worried, and frightened. They want to do something. They need guidance. They need organization. They need to be, given expert lawyers and experts who have been to fight the K-12 battles and the campus battles. They don't know what to do. So we're trying to be the one, maybe not the only ones, right? We open to working with everybody. We're trying to figure out how to form a resistance to this that makes sense and is strategic. That's the only answer, because we're alone unless we're not. And we don't have to be, because we have these natural allies. Let's get them. But you don't wait for the ADL to turn around. Ain't going to happen.
How would you assess Jonathan Greenblatt's job so far?
Well, it's really interesting. The more we bash him, the more he moves a couple of inches. You know, we first thought, the best thing for us to do is to pester them and convince them, persuade them and shame them and humiliate them. You know, we had these Jumbotron trucks going around outside his office, betrayer of whatever we did. We thought maybe they would turn and come our way because they have all the money, man. Who are we? But it's not going to happen. We figured out it. Recently, he did a little bit of a pivot. He stood with some Latin American church that was burned down. He said Jews and Latin Americans, stand together against what? Against jihad? No, against hatred. That's hatred is like a normal. Hatred's human.
What was that? What was that? AJ? I saw the AJC had a poster after October 7th. I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was something along those lines. It was like united against hatred. I said, no, after October 7th, I would like to be united against anti-Semitism. Hatred can wait, maybe a day or two.
Hatred can wait. Yeah,
this could just be like anti-Semitism.
When Mashiach comes, when Mashiach comes, the hatred will end. But until then, yeah.
Can we please take the moment to be about Jews? Why does it have to be about every other segment of hatred for like that 1 second? Like on the October 7th poster, I didn't it was just.
It's in their DNA, man. They're not. They can't imagine that they would have to say to people, Donald Trump. Oh my God, he did. This burns them on the inside to be able to say such things. They can't say it. Imagine if they said, we're sorry, we sent you in the wrong direction. Now you're in a dark alley, waiting for a guy with a baseball bat to hit you because we sent you down the dark alley of these identity groups. I mean, how are they going to ever say that? So the Jews are alone unless we're smart. We're
Right.
good. We got allies. We can fight. We can win.
But I think that maybe perhaps there's an amnesty period. People that came from this left. I mean, look, David Horowitz, blessed memory, he was a Marxist. maybe there is room for people to transition to the. I mean, that is what
Actually,
neoconservatism was originally.
I'll tell you, the best fighters are people who were leftists because they know how to organize. You don't know this about me. I was a Maoist in college. I was.
Oh, get off the program. No, no,
Yeah.
okay. Well, wow. Okay, so you know what I mean. By the way, that was I mentioned Charlie Kirk earlier. He actually knew that American institutions were fantastic and that the American project is unbelievable, and he wanted to use it to his advantage. He saw how well Obama and the people in Chicago organized, and that was the original impetus for TPUSA in terms of what was going on. So yeah, I agree with you in terms of seeing how the hard left uh, and the Saul Alinsky type tactics, but actually using it on the right side. I want to touch on something now with TPUSA and kind of we've now addressed some of the left and how we deal with it there. But for those of us on the right, how do you anticipate handling some of the right wing anti-Semitism coming from the likes of Tucker Carlson?
And Candace Owens and Nick Fuentes and all those people, right? It's a frightening thing. I have to say,
I put Fuentes in a different category, by the way. We can talk about that, but I put him in a different
okay,
category.
okay. I understand that. This is a big problem. It's the one thing I didn't see coming. I saw all the left. I saw all the Muslims. I didn't see this coming, and we got to think it through. I mean, we have to hope that there's a William F. Buckley on the right, who when he was leading the intellectual charge from the right, he threw out people who were anti-Semites, Sobran and others. We have to hope that Donald Trump. We have to hope that Donald Trump is going to put his foot down. I see it a little bit every day from our side on the right is really now upset about this and they're attacking the people on the right. But this is really dangerous and it's being made more dangerous by social media because any idiot can get on social media and say something about Jews that seems like thrilling to them. Thrilling, they're breaking a taboo. They love that. They're breaking a taboo. It's the wrong taboo. Let them say it about the Muslims. But and it's really, really dangerous because people don't know what the truth is anymore. No one is being taught the foundations of Western liberalism in
Or reading
schools
books.
or of reading books, right? And we are really vulnerable to this kind of thing, and we have to think it through. And we right now, the hope is that we're clever enough to mock them, to make them look foolish, and powerful enough to overpower them on social media. That's a big lift. That's a heavy lift.
That's how. Let me give you my breakdown of it. And I want to hear what you have to say. Candace Owens, I actually think has a health problem. Nothing makes sense about her behavior in terms of going after someone she claims is her friend, in terms of Charlie Kirk and all this weird stuff about his death, and it's just really unhinged.
But
Tucker Carl,
didn't she marry some Catholic guy who was like a pre-Pope John Catholic who was like
she
one of the
yes, but it's nothing about it. But for Candace to go from sitting in Israel as the embassy has moved next to Charlie Kirk and defending
yeah,
Judeo-Christian values to all of a sudden, promoting the revisionist history about the Holocaust and and elevating things from the 60s, anti-Semitic blood libels from the 60s. Uh, Something has gone seriously wrong, and I'm not sure she's like I think she really needs help. Tucker Carlson, I think, is getting paid, and I think that
yeah,
he
yeah.
understands that he's driving everyone mad, and he's just doing it to try to provoke people. He is smart, and I think he did it. He's doing it just to annoy people. He knows exactly what he's doing. The Nick Fuentes thing is a different category to me, which is Nick Fuentes probably agrees with 70% of American Jewish conservatives in the sense that he despises the ADL for many of the same reasons that you and I would despise the ADL. He despises the hard left, like the Ethical Culture Center, for the same reasons that you and I despise the Ethical Culture Center.
Yep.
He's insanely entertaining online, which is why he makes him dangerous, because he entertains people in a way that even Tucker and these other people can't.
Right.
He has this way of being so captivating, and his display, even though I'm watching him say some of the most heinous things, he is incredibly captivating. And
He's funny. He's
yeah,
funny.
he's extremely funny.
Yeah.
I think that Fuentes, as weird as it sounds, if people could actually sit down with him, and I hope that people like you or I could sit down with him in a real way and have a conversation about actually explaining some of the differences. Like, he doesn't see a difference between you, me, and Dave Smith. And I think that's profoundly ignorant. And I'm not excusing any of his racism or any of the other things he displays on his show, but specifically on the Jewish issue, he's extremely ignorant, because there's a whole host of people in the Jewish community who would agree with him on a lot of things. And then when you get into the whole APAC, and I think that's a little bit of the trying to be bombastic for show stuff and whatever's going on. I don't think he's like Marjorie Taylor Greene. I don't think he really thinks it in the same way. But that's where I see the different categories. Because if you notice, Fuentes is actually mad at Tucker and he's mad at Candace. He says these are low IQ anti-Semites, and he's the high IQ anti-Semite.
Right.
And that, so it's not all the same brush.
That's his niche, right? That's his
No,
niche.
because
He's
yeah, but Fuentes is making legitimate points about
yeah.
historically having people like George Soros and others funding hard left ideologies that are anti-American. So he's saying
Listen,
that's not
yeah.
wrong.
No.
But the ADL is just going to say, oh, you're crazy, you're going after everyone, therefore you're a horrible person. And I'm not saying he's a good person, but
yeah.
there's a way to say, listen, what you're saying, you can't put Bezalel Smotrich and George Soros in the same category. I'm sorry, it's just completely different.
Only if you're Hitler. Only if you're Hitler.
Correct. Right. And I think that there is an opportunity there to kind of
well,
break it apart.
I knew somebody who tried to talk to him a long time ago, and who had the same thought as you, and it didn't work out at the time. The one thing I'll say, I don't know who he is. He is entertaining, and that's dangerous. And he breaks taboos, and that's dangerous, because all of the kids on the right want to break the taboo of what the left has put on their head.
Correct.
Right? That's why the right exists as it is. But I will say one thing: you have your finger on it. I think it's true. Leftist Jews have joined a movement to destroy America, right? You look at Hayas. Hayas imports Muslims, and they say it's from a Jewish heart, because nobody allowed Holocaust survivors to come in this country when we most needed to. Therefore, this is like 3-year-old thinking. Therefore, anybody who wants to come into this country, we're going to let them come, and we're not going to vet them. We're not going to ask them. So I called up Hayas and I said, how can you let these unvetted people from Muslim worlds, where the highest degree of anti-Semitism exists? Well, they say, they do vet them. They look and see what's on their social media, and if they're terrorists, they don't let them in. I said, but what about the bomb in the heart? what about these guys who are coming in who hate Jews, who hate women, who hate democracy, who hate Christianity, but you're not going to find it on their social media, maybe, and you're invited. They won't talk to me. I mean, but so Hayas, which claims to be Jewish, even though they changed the Hebrew, the
Correct.
H, okay, and there's George Soros. Oh my! And his son could be worse, by the way, because he could be more savvy about modern day techniques. And all of the Jews on the left who fought for, they were on Black Lives Matter. In other words, and they were saying America is inherently a racist place. Despicable that they would do that. I wanted to kill them. I wanted to stop them. And so Nick Fuentes and by the way, the Nazis in Europe, the real Nazis in Europe, do the same thing. They point to rabbis in Europe who say, we have to let the Muslims in. And they say, you see, the Jews want revenge for the Holocaust, and they're letting people come in to rape the daughters of Christendom, right? Well, it kind of makes a certain sense if you think of it that way. So it's the Jewish left who has put us in so much danger that they gave Nick Fuentes a sword against us.
Right. And I think just because a Jew has an opinion doesn't make it a Jewish opinion. And I think that it's very important to try to block some of this leftist stuff out as much as possible.
But that's true. That's true in theory. That's absolutely true in theory, and that's the way it should be. But there weren't a few of them. There were a lot of them.
No, right. But what I'm saying is that
and they said they spoke for the Jewish community, and they spoke for a lot of the Jewish community.
By the way, it's the same thing. If you look at what's going on with Megyn Kelly, right? She's gone off the rails. And she just had Anna Kasparian on her show, and she's right. But what happened? One of the things that and the whole Charlie Kirk thing it's too much to get into right here. There's a lot of stuff behind the scenes, but when she had that clip of Charlie Kirk talking on her show a month before he was assassinated, and then she went and she spoke at the Turning Point USA event, the American Jewish Committee attacked them on behalf of all Jews for speculating about whether or not Epstein was Mossad. Speculating whether or not Epstein was Mossad is a way in which two people that are in the entertainment space are trying to entertain a bunch of 3,000, 20-something-year-olds at a conference talking about something that's in the news. Do I think that they're sitting there plotting, saying, oh, look, did you? No! They're saying there's no evidence. Do you think this is a plausible thing? And then the AJC comes and says, these guys are rabid anti-Semites and that's how you ostracize
It
potential
wasn't a very
allies.
smart thing to do. It wasn't a very smart thing to do,
But this is what's happening when these leftist organizations speak on behalf of the Jewish community, and we don't push back. They don't speak. The AJC speaks for nobody. They are an organization that can speak for, maybe it speaks for the leftist few donors that give to them. The ADL does not speak for the Jewish community.
No,
So,
nobody elected them. Nobody
correct.
elected them.
So
Right?
I think that if there's anything, now we have podcasts like this, we have otherwise, I think we have to take it back in terms of just saying, listen, to the people out there that are speculating about the Jews and whatever it might be, talk to the Jewish people who know what's going on. It doesn't have to be that these leftists, we love America. We believe that the American values are important, and we are very upset at groups like J Street and the ADL and the AJC.
And we fought them.
And we fight them
For 20 years.
Yes.
We lost friends about it, and we lost, we really shed blood on this fight, and we're still fighting.
And we're fighting them all the time.
We will fight them all the time.
Yeah, I think that and that's where, to me, it's like I think sometimes they throw out these red herrings to try to get people distracted. But I think if we really focus on just actually being very clear to the right, I think it could be salvageable. I'm very nervous about it because there's a lot of foreign money behind it, and they have a lot of influence, and they have so many characters, and they've very much succeeded in basically saying if a Jewish person opens their mouth, oh, that must be some sort of Zionist plot or Mossad plot, right? This is all the stuff they put out.
Well, listen, anti-Semitism is the strongest conspiracy theory, the longest lasted, the history, the hate that just doesn't go away. So this is all true. And that's why we have to really be thoughtful and strategic about how we approach the Christian world. And listen, Charlie Kirk's assassination and his work has led to a Christian revival in this country that I am proud of. I am so proud that there be a Jew saying, I want there to be a Christian revival, because the people who are being revivalists understand the Torah. These are people who read and who know who we are and who they are, and they'll stand with us. And God forbid it gets hijacked by these people, and we have to fight that fight.
Absolutely. And I don't know if you saw this the other day. Someone put out there was an analysis of the top 100 universities who issued a statement when George Floyd died and who issued a statement when Charlie Kirk was assassinated. When George Floyd died, 93 of the top 100 universities issued a statement. When Charlie Kirk was assassinated on a college campus, 17 of the top 100 issued a statement.
What? But I have to say, this is the Jewish establishment bears a lot of guilt for this and shame for this, because they knew 25 years ago when we made that film about Columbia Unbecoming, they knew what was happening, and they didn't want to fight because they're not fighters, and they want to, go along to get along, and they wanted their nice fat salaries, and they wanted their big fat gala dinners and posing with this one and posing with that one. I mean, this is who they were, and they could have known, they should have known that this was an assault on America, and the Jews were going to be the first ones in the crosshairs.
And I want to,
fight.
And I want to put it in real policy, right? When, you and I really first connected on the whole J Street stuff, right? You have people that were in the Biden administration, putting aside all of Israel's problems on October 7th and my own personal anger with the Ministry of Defense and all the other stuff, the lack of preparedness. But you have people in the Biden administration who were in Students for Justice in Palestine and or J Street. Okay? People that were involved in policy, that were involved talking to hostage families that were involved with being a liaison with the Jewish community. And these people are influencing policy that adversely affects the hostages, the soldiers, displaced families, the security of the Jewish people. So it's not like this is some abstract concept. The
No,
absolute worst thing that could have happened to Israel happened on October 7th. And people that were directly or indirectly empowered by the American Jewish left that did nothing to prevent this onslaught on campus and even before were in positions of power. If you go to a college campus and everybody goes and tells you occupation, occupation, you have all sorts of apartheid, et cetera, et cetera. And then there's an attack and you say, how do we handle this? You say, well, the root is really apartheid. The root is really occupation. And that's how you get these horrible policies. So can you really fault when you have Joe Biden, who is may or may not have been functional during, the better part of the war, and he has all of his people running around the White House, and a lot of them were graduates of these hard left programs that the American Jewish community did not stop. So
right.
as much as we want to look externally, there's a lot of fault that lies within the Jewish community.
Absolutely right. It's a shameful chapter. And when history is written, that will be the story, that the Jewish establishment failed to protect and defend its people because of cowardice, because of the wrong thinking, because of ideological softness, and because they wanted to keep their jobs. And this is the biggest shame ever. And that's why they're not going to pivot, because how can they admit to these things and say we were wrong? Now follow us again. We know what to do. It's not going to happen.
So my hope in this program and others, my hope is just to invite further conversations. If anybody that we talked about or was involved in any of these things would like to come on and have a discussion with me and Dr. Jacobs, I'm sure Dr. Jacobs, you'd love to come back and do that. And actually, I think it's the best thing to do. Sunlight's the best disinfectant, and we can have a discussion and keep pushing the ball forward. For those who want to check out your work, where should they be looking these days?
JewishLeadershipProject.org. And also, one other thing before we go, what happened to the Jews on October 7th is happening to Africans every day. The same MO. The jihadists storm African villages. They scream Allah Akbar. They slit the throats of the men. They rape and burn and torture the women and children, and they kidnap them as sex slaves. Same thing. I formed the African Jewish Alliance with American Nigerians and Sudanese and Darfurians and others. And the world and we had a breakthrough. We had a breakthrough. For 10 months. We've been pumping social media with what's going on in Nigeria. And as you know, a couple of weeks ago, Bill Maher and Van Jones said there's no genocide in Gaza, but there is one in Nigeria. And how come nobody's talking about that? It's against Christians. It's by Muslims, et cetera, et cetera. So this, to me, is the way we eventually win. Going on the offense, having natural allies, and being against jihadism. And so I think people who are interested in that should go to the African Jewish Alliance or JewishLeadershipProject.org.
Absolutely. I think it's extremely important because, to quote the left here, as people who survived a genocide, right? The Jewish people surviving the Holocaust, it's important to stand up against it. And when there actually is genocide going on in the world, it's important that the Jewish people are there as a resource, as an ally, and fighting on their behalf. So thank you for what you're doing with that.
Okay. And thank you. It's good to see you. I remember when we worked together and you were great. You were great. If we had 10 Daniel Males working in my organization right now, we would be winning.
Listen, I'm back in the game because I saw what was going on. So I appreciate taking the time here. Thank you so much.